Since the foundations of the United States, Americans have always held their freedom in high regards. Americans value their rights and liberties and consider them some of the most important things in their lives. Our civil liberties are our individual freedoms that limit the government's power over us, whereas our civil rights are guarantees that we, as U.S. citizens, are entitled to and are protected by the United States government. What role do our rights play in American democracy, and how do these rights affect us? When our founders went about setting up the United States, they had a goal to limit the government enough so that it would not become tyrannical and oppress its citizens. They believed that government should protect the rights and liberties of its citizens, not oppress them. So the founders made sure to give the citizens protected rights as a way to balance and check the government's power. In 1788, when the Constitution was ratified, the founders made sure to include the Bill of Rights, the original 10 amendments that guaranteed and protected our basic American rights. These rights not just limited our government, but also empowered us. All these rights are important to liberty and how our government is run. There is one serious issue, which is what happens when rights conflict. Our rights allow us to live a certain way and gives people the power to do things their way. So it is natural for serious conflict to arise between people who live differently and or do things in their lives differently. Another serious conflict with rights we see is in matters of national security. Examples of this can be seen during the early 2000s close to the 9/11 attacks and the rise of terrorism. After 9/11, many rights, especially rights involving privacy, were allegedly violated in the name of national security. Luckily for us, there are ways to resolve these conflicts. Congress and the President are two parts of the government that can deal with conflicts. Congress can vote on bills that solve these issues. The President can send bills to Congress and or encourage the Supreme Court and Congress members to support those bills. The people themselves can help by voicing their opinion about a solution over these conflicts, which would pressure political figures who address issues involving rights. However, the most important part of the United States government that can ultimately resolve conflicts is the courts. The court will ultimately decide what is constitutional and legal. The court determines if somebody's rights are being violated and who is right in these cases. Courts almost always serve as places to resolve conflicts involving our rights. I mentioned before how the founders made sure to include the Bill of Rights in the Constitution and that it was incredibly important to our rights and liberties. Now we are going to talk about them and how they are incorporated in the U.S. government. First and foremost, we need to talk about why the Bill of Rights is so valuable. When the Constitution was being written out, the Anti-Federalists and Federalists argued over if the Bill of Rights should be included. The Federalists said there was no need to write out the Bill of Rights because there was an understanding that the government already knew the rights of the people and it was unnecessary to write them out. The Anti-Federalists argued otherwise and in a way did not want to take that risk. Obviously, in the end, the Bill of Rights was added and it is one of the most valuable parts of the Constitution because it protects our rights and no one or thing can easily get rid of or go around it. We incorporate the Bill of Rights by always referring to it whenever arguments over an individual's rights are at hand. Also, many standards and procedures in the U.S. have been in accordance with the Bill of Rights, which is another way it is incorporated. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about these 10 amendments. The First Amendment gives us arguably the most important and powerful right in the United States, and that is the freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition. The First Amendment guarantees that under no circumstances can anyone or thing, especially the government, can tell you what or what not to believe in, express, and say. This is so important because in a way this allows us to be the people we want to be. However, there are some limitations to mention. This amendment makes way for a separation between church and state, does not protect individuals from seditious and obscene language and images, and does not protect libel and slander for the press. The reason why we have the Establishment Clause, the part in the First Amendment that says the government will not create or support an official state church, is so that the risk of prejudice based off of belief or religion is minimized. The founders wanted to make a government that would not be biased towards a certain group of people, especially in terms of religion. Continuing on, the First Amendment does not protect language that is considered seditious or harmful. The reason for this is for obvious reasons, that is, for our safety and the safety of the nation. Seditious language promotes rebellion, which can seriously endanger many people. For this, we use the clear and present danger test as a way to see if what a person said was going to or did cause trouble. If proven it did, then it is not protected. Finally, the First Amendment does not protect libel or slander. For the most part, press is free to report whatever they want, even if it is news that would not be in the best interest of groups or certain people. However, when the press goes so far as to defame or slander someone, knowing full well that what they were saying was not true, then what they are saying is not protected by the First Amendment. The right to bear arms, the Second Amendment, has come into some serious flack due to some recent tragic events. The intent of the right was so people could protect themselves from danger and or the government if on the off chance it became tyrannical. However, recently the need for this amendment has become a topic for debate. The Third Amendment allows us to refuse to give shelter to troops on the onset of war. Recently, this right has not really been a subject for anything, but it is still important. The Fourth and Eighth Amendments all protect the rights of people who are accused of committing crimes. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. Wait, why would criminals get rights? They broke laws and did terrible things. Or the reason is all because it is another way to check the government's power, and also it is our tradition that someone is innocent until proven guilty. If criminals did not have some rights, then that would allow the government to have more power that our founding fathers did not want. The government could end all criticism towards it by unjustly imprisoning anyone they saw as a threat. Some rights that criminals get is protection from unreasonable searches and seizures, protection from self-incrimination, the right to a counsel, and protection from cruel and unusual punishment. The Ninth and Tenth Amendments deal with rights that people have that may not have been mentioned in the Constitution. So what this means is that while there are specific rights mentioned in the Bill of Rights, a person's rights are not limited to those rights that are talked about. The Ninth Amendment says that we as citizens have rights that are not mentioned in the Constitution that are still protected even though they are not mentioned, like privacy. The Tenth Amendment gives states the authority to make decisions about things not mentioned inside the Constitution. An example would be drug enforcement laws and/or laws over automobile use. This is because the founders knew that there will be circumstances where the Constitution does not explicitly talk about something, thus the choice of what to do about these circumstances and how to solve these conflicts is up to the state. Finally, I want to mention some things that are not exactly mentioned in the Constitution but are still important rights. As I said previously, the Ninth Amendment touches on rights that are protected and not mentioned in the Constitution. Some of these rights are privacy rights. So when it comes to subjects involving sexuality, whether or not someone wants to die, or in other words, assisted suicide, and human reproduction, you have rights to these matters. So for reproduction, women are given the right to choose how they want to proceed with it, like if they want to get an abortion or not. For death, if somebody wants to commit suicide and have help from a doctor, they have the right to be assisted in their suicide. Lastly, for sexuality, people who identify as homosexual or whatever they identify as, they are given the right to do this and not be punished or treated unequally. Now, one thing to note about these privacy rights is how controversial they can be. We are not going to get too deep into this because for obvious reasons, one of them being no one wants to sit here for God knows how long. The reasons for these things being so controversial is because they are not specifically mentioned in the Constitution, so everyone has their own beliefs about these things and how they are to be handled. That is everything in Chapter 5. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.